Beautiful. So let's do this. We're going to start today. We're going to spend most of our time in Power Session 3. And Power Session 3 would have been sent out to you on Friday, right? Because we were going to get there on Friday. So check your email from Friday if that's the if that's what you're if you don't have that ready in front of you, and or if you did not, go ahead and dial into my KW and grab that. So we're going to spend most of our time in Power Session 3 today. You also should have received some expired scripts earlier from the market centers in your email. So do check that. We'll be doing that a little bit later in the session. Where I wanted to start, however, was the idea. We talked about prospecting into your database a whole bunch last week, and I wanted to finish that with just a quick review of exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about prospecting into your database. And so, if you wouldn't mind, flip to page 14 in your materials. So, Power Session 3, page 14. And on page 14, you have a funnel. Shall I pop it up on the screen just in case somebody doesn't have it? Hold on a second and I'll do that. So the funnel I'm talking about is right here. Somebody talk to me a little bit about what they see with this funnel. The top of it says prospecting determines the size of your funnel. So talk to me about this funnel. Why are we spending time looking at it?
You have to cast a wide net because you're going to lose people in every stage till you get down to the number that you want. So you have to work back to make sure you're starting with enough leads. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So Margaret says casting a wide net. I couldn't agree more. That is crazy important to cast a really wide net, right? Because remember, leads are only names of people, right? We talk about leads as if they're closings. And if you take nothing away from our time together tonight, take away the fact that leads are not closings. Leads are names of people. They're opportunities, they're possibilities. And they have to go through a whole funnel before they turn into actual income for you. All those leads, you have to then apply some conversion techniques to make sure that you're turning leads into actual appointments, right? Those appointments actually then have to buy a house or list their house, which turns into agreements, right? Once you have agreements with people, you then have to write contracts with them. And then once you write those contracts, you close and get paid. So there's a whole lot of steps. There's definitely fallout in all of that. But I think one of the things that people confuse the most is, I need more leads. No, you don't. What you need are more appointments, right? Because once you have an appointment, then your skill can move in and bring them through to a close. Right? Leads are not closings. Appointments are far closer to closings than leads. If I drew that funnel, the top little rung there that said leads would be way wider, and it would go really fast into the appointments, agreements, contracts piece of it. But the top rim piece of leads would be twice that size, because that's how I believe you have to run a business, right? You've got to have leads like this, and then the funnel goes whoosh, and then goes down like this. It doesn't quite just go like this. You got to start way out here to be able to have things drip out the bottom. Yeah. So any questions on that? So if you turn to page 16 in your materials, 16 says there are 4 C's
that you have to get really good at in terms of prospecting, and that's capture, connect, cultivate, and close, or close and cultivate, depending on the opportunity. And so I want to just run through that really quick, because it's most of the things we're going to speak about today are capturing techniques. Some of them are capturing and connecting techniques, but most of our source of business conversation today is going to be all about where you can go to capture possibilities, to put yourself in the path of people, right? Because that's what you need the most of. You need to be in the path of people more often than not. And those are all capturing techniques, right? How are we capturing people at an open house? How are we capturing expireds? How are we capturing people inside of our database? How are we capturing people with Facebook ads? How are we capturing opportunities with agent-to-agent referrals or networking or any of those other sources of business that we'll discuss? It's all about client acquisition and capturing, right? Once you have those people captured, you need to apply some of the systems that we talked about, like that 36 touch program, inside and outside of Command, to make sure that you're constantly connecting with them, right? That's the connection and cultivation portion of our program. That's the touch, 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 over and over and over again. Touch, 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 over and over and over again. And then from a leads perspective, when it says close, I want you to be clear that that doesn't mean attend a closing. What that means is you have to be able to close people for the business. It means you have to convert the names into actual appointments. It means you have to then take the appointments and close the business. And this is one of those things that I will tell you in coaching real estate agents, probably 50 to 70% of the people that I have an opportunity to spend time with and coach forward suffer from anti-closing disease, because they feel like when you talk about closing people, it's way too salesman-y, right? It's way too pushy and salesman-y. So the first thing I want you to do, if you have it on you, take it out. Who has their real estate license handy? If you take out your real estate license, somebody read to me what it says. What are you called? What kind of a license do you have in the state of Connecticut? It's a
real estate salesperson.
You have a real estate salesperson's license. You got it. So do you think that if you're licensed as a salesperson, you need to have some sales skills? And I will tell you, in all transparency, when I was new to the business, I started my career at Century 21, and they sent me to this training program. And the person who taught the training program said the most complicated thing, it wasn't even confusing. I think it was confusing is what I'll call it. She said the most confusing thing to me. And it took me a year to figure out how wrong she was. And what she said to the class was, your license says salesperson, but what people really want from you is for you to be a marketing consultant. And so we're going to spend our time showing you how to be a marketing consultant. Guys, she could not have been more wrong, because what people want when they hire a real estate salesperson is someone who gets the job done. Do you have to have marketing skills? Sure, but you have to know how to get it done. You have to know how to push forward. That doesn't mean push people. It means push forward and guide people towards the next step. So when you hear the word close come out of my mouth, if it bristles you the wrong way, here's what I want you to think. I want you to think being directive. Closing as a salesperson simply to me means being directive with your clients. And to me, being directive means gently pulling them forward. for their own benefit. It doesn't mean yanking them forward, because that's how they get whiplash, right? But it certainly doesn't mean leaving them sit over there and you sit over here wishing that they would make a decision, right? Being directive means helping them make those decisions, helping them figure out what those next steps are, and then guiding them along the way such that their next steps move them forward to a closing, right? That's the idea of the close. That's the idea of being directive and being a sales person. Does that make sense to everybody? Please don't leave here thinking, oh, you know what? The best way to be a real estate agent is to make sure that I have great marketing skills. Because that accomplishes one portion of the job, right? People who are successful do know how to market themselves, and that they know how to market property. And yet if you don't combine that with actual sales skills, all you're doing is marketing yourself and marketing property. You're not actually being directive and guiding and leading people to the result that they are looking for. Here's the other thing, the other myth I want to dispel right now. Whew, I'm gonna get all this off my chest. It'll feel so good. The other myth I want to dispel has to do, isn't it funny? I got that whole big setup and then I forgot what I was gonna say. So wait, I have to go back. We're recording, right? I should go back and listen to myself speak. Wow. Usually Boston's good at following my my train of thought and giving me where I was going, but
You have to have sales skills. You will need some marketing skills. One more thing I want to dispel. What was that?
It'll come to me.
Okay.
It'll come to me, and it may happen in the next hour and 45 minutes. It may happen by Friday. We'll see. If I wake up in the middle of the night, which by the way never happens, so don't count on it. I promise not to call. So let's dive into page 19 real quick, because what I want to do is give you an understanding of what I'm talking about when we talk about closing. And so on page 19, you've got a list of 10 closes. Right? Remember, when we're talking about prospecting or lead generating or client acquisition, whether it's on the phone or via text or in person or via email or on social media, however you're diving into that client acquisition mode, you'll need to move people along to actually close them for an appointment, close them for a sale. And I want to run through real quickly these 10 versions just to give you an idea that what we're talking about isn't about being rude and aggressive. It's not about banging people over the head. There's lots of different ways to accomplish this. And so as we go through these, I want you to just put a little mark next to the ones that you think kind of sing to you and your personality, and maybe put an X next to the ones that you think that are maybe a little outside of your comfort zone. And then I'm going to tell you what to do with those little dots and X's. So you know what? Let's do this. I am going to. We'll kind of just go down the list if it's all right, and start with number one. Somebody unmute. As you guys unmute to volunteer to read these, don't say anything, because I'll see that you've unmuted and I'll call on you as you unmute. So a whole bunch of you unmute. We're going to run through this real quick. All right, let's start with Margaret. Number one, the hard close. Give us an example of that.
Let's meet.
Pretty simple, right? Short and sweet. Let's meet. Let's just do it. Christian, go ahead. Give us the soft close.
I don't think I have the right materials here.
Connie, go ahead and give us the soft close.
I've really enjoyed visiting with you. When would you like to get together to discuss this further?
There you go, right? So it's kind of the same thing, the same point that Margaret made, except with a whole lot more words, right? We kind of took the long way around to get to the same place, right? Now, numbers 3 and 4, direct and indirect, kind of give you that same back and forth. So let's go with the direct close. Who's up there? John, go ahead.
Direct close. Can we meet today or would tomorrow be better?
Right, pretty direct, short and to the point. Let's get it done. And then there's the indirect close. Who wants to give us that? Go ahead, Margaret, you're still unmuted.
Would it be okay if I got you some information to look over and then we can meet to discuss?
Right, so again, one kind of just boom, right in between the eyeballs. The other kind of dances around it a little bit longer, adding something permission-based, right? Would it be okay if, right? Those are permission-based prefixes in script work so that you're asking permission for something. It softens everything. Instead of you just asking the question, you're asking for permission to ask the question to get the job done, right? All righty. Boy, no more volunteers, huh? We go back and forth between John and Margaret. John, give us number 5, the trial close.
I think you would agree that we have gone over enough today. That meeting would be our next step.
Right, so you're gonna take a stab at it. Love that. Donna, go ahead and give us number 6, the assumptive close.
It sounds like we should meet. I'm available most times this week. So what works best for you?
So that's a great example. I'm gonna change that a little bit because I don't love their example of the assumptive close, right? Yeah. The version I like better is, Donna, it sounds like we should meet. I have 5 o'clock tomorrow or 6 o'clock tomorrow. Which works best for you, right? It's kind of that, they call it the alternative choice close down at number 10, right? But when you have that assumptive close, combine some of these. Make the assumptive close the alternative choice close. Fuse them together, right? Because when you fuse some of these things together, they're far more powerful. The assumptive close is kind of open-ended, right? I can meet whenever. Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but I can't meet whenever. I have a schedule. And so I want to make sure that people understand that I'm not just sitting waiting around for them to pick a time. Here's when I can meet. Let's fold you into those times. Who else we got? Go ahead, Chelsea. Give us number 7, the negative positive close.
Would you be offended if I asked if we could meet and go over this?
So the negative positive close is kind of an interesting one. And it's the one I get the most pushback on for people saying, I don't love that so much. Here's why I love it. It's predictive, right? When you ask somebody, would you be offended? And then follow it with, if I could ask to meet to go over some material, like if I could have an appointment, like who's going to say yes? I would be absolutely offended by that. No one was going to say yes, I'd be offended. So it leads them to a no, which then allows the follow-up to say, great, I have this time or this time today or tomorrow, which works best for you, right? I don't know about the rest of you, but offended? I can't think of something that someone could say to me on this call that I would actually say, yes, I'm offended by that. I mean, that's like being offended. That's pretty strong. Number 8, the take back close. Go ahead, Connie.
I've really enjoyed visiting with you. To be honest, I'm not sure if I can be of help or not, but I would be honored if we can meet to find out.
Yeah, I'll tell you, take backs are kind of fun, right? Take backs are the dangle of the carrot that says, yeah, you know what? There's so much for us to talk about. I'm not 100% sure I'm your guy, right? And you say it because what you understand is that they're already thinking you're that person, right? And so when who knows who Barbara Corcoran is, right? So Barbara Corcoran, the founder of the Corcoran Group in New York, and of course on Shark Tank nowadays. So if you know Barbara from Shark Tank, but here's the thing: Barbara wrote a book, right? And in one of the chapters of her book are entitled "Everyone Wants What Everyone Wants." Right. So the second you dangle something in front of somebody and they kind of want it and you take it away, they want it even more. So that's the kind of the psychology behind that take back close. Take backs are really, really important. Now, I'll give you an example of a physical take back that I used to do with listing clients. And it had everything to do with when things weren't going well and we were struggling with objections. It had everything to do with packing my briefcase. Because I could tell that they wanted to hire me. They just wanted to hire me under terms that I wasn't willing to work for. And so I used to pack my briefcase. And as soon as I started packing my briefcase, all of a sudden, wait, where are you going? Well, it looks like I may not be the right choice for you. It looks like we may not be a match. It looks like we may have to agree to disagree on the best path to get this job done. And so to not take up any more of your time, I wanted to say thank you so much for, well, but don't leave. Okay. So what's going to be different?
Rick, do you feel like that works best for the client that is really kind of, you can tell by their personality or clearly indicating they do best by if they have the control? Kind of like you're letting them think it's their idea.
Yeah, it's a great question, Chelsea. And the answer is perhaps. I haven't really thought about behavioral style and that technique. And the answer is it may well work for people who want to be in control, because now they get to say what the terms are, even though you're kind of setting the terms.
Right.
Yeah.
But that reverse psychology giving them.
Yeah. Good point. Number 9. Go ahead, Chelsea. Why don't you give us number 9 while you're on there?
Wouldn't it make sense for us to meet in the next day or so?
Right. So that's the tie down close. And what we know from script work is tie downs, right? Tie downs are questions that push people in the direction of the head nod, of the yes answer, right? So examples of tie downs, wouldn't it make sense for us? Isn't that right? Would you agree? Right? All those are tie downs that get people kind of bobbleheading that up and down yes. Because when you get people bobbleheading that up and down yes by asking a whole lot of tie down style questions, it's hard for people to stop the bobblehead up and down yes, right? So you get them bobbleheading and then have that close of, saying that if there are no other questions, does it make sense for you to hire me this evening? Well, they're already bobbleheading so much yes that they just keep going with the yes. And number 10, the alternative choice close. Go ahead, Margaret, bring us home.
What works better for you? Meeting today, sometime this afternoon, or tomorrow morning?
Right, so we kind of talked about that one earlier. And again, what I like best is being specific. Being specific about the times that you are available. So that alternative choice close is, I have 7 o'clock tonight or 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, which works best for you, right? 2 choices, maybe both in the same day, maybe one a little later, maybe 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, right? To get that done.
Hey,
Any
Rick,
questions on these? Yes. Okay.
seems like there's a bunch of us that do not have what you're talking about.
Okay, so all of this was sent on Friday to everybody.
Mhm.
So if you don't have it from Friday, maybe someone can, if you pop your email address in the chat, maybe someone can volunteer to email to forward from Friday.
I just sent it to
Okay.
Christian. I can send it to the other 2 folks.
It's from Friday. I was looking at today's email from Robert.
No,
Yeah, I think that's what's confusing because we were a
it
little
was the
behind.
Ignite part
too.
for
I was
me.
looking at today.
Yeah, so today you got scripts that we'll do a little bit later. What we're working on now came on Friday. It's power session number 3. So any questions about the closes? Any questions about why it's important to recognize that as a salesperson, you do have to have some sales skills and be able to move people forward to a close? Again, that's not pushy, not rude, not aggressive. Well, it maybe is aggressive, depending on the circumstance. Let's be
No
clear.
questions, Rick, but a lot of those ones seemed really similar. You know what I mean? Like this afternoon or tomorrow, 4 o'clock. Like I almost feel like they didn't need 10. It was really more like 6, neither
Yeah,
person
see,
there, but-
I agree with you, Margaret. And the reality is there's 10 of them to make sure that everybody, because we've got a whole bunch of different behavioral profiles, right? On this call, we have a whole bunch of different behavioral profiles across the country utilizing these tools to make sure that everybody has one or two that they feel comfortable with, right?
Got it.
I mean, for me, you know, some of these long-winded ones, oh my goodness, I think I'd rather just shove a pencil in my eyeball, right? But for some of you, that feels more natural. It feels better, right? Some of the wrapping the cushions around people is the way you communicate. It just doesn't have to be how I communicate, right? For me, if it's like that number one, let's meet. If we have to go more than that, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. We can talk about it if we need to, but bam, let's just move it forward, right? All righty. So I wanted to make the point with you that moving people forward. Thank you so much. Whoever it is, is that Margaret pushing out to everybody? Yes, Margaret is our emailer du jour. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. All right. So let's move forward now into onto page 26. I want to dive into our prospecting sources. You know, before we move into the prospecting sources, let's have this conversation real quick. Remember that if folks chose to do this on their own and could do it on their own well, then we wouldn't exist, right? There's a reason that fewer than 10% of people buy or sell without a real estate professional. And that's because what we do is help guide people through this process. We have a role in all this to make things simpler. If you're not being directive through the process, you're not making things simpler, right? So be careful about the judgment you make about that. I think I'm remembering what I was going to say before. Wasn't I saying that about 50 or 60 or 70% of the people I coach suffer from this one thing? Aha, I found it. I knew it was there someplace. And what they suffer from is, I don't want to come across as pushy-itis, right? That's a very long medical term for discomfort around being directive, discomfort around having effective sales skills. Now, remember, we talked last week that all scripts are written for the benefit of whom? The client, right? The client. That's who scripts are written for the benefit for, right? They're not written so that you can sell more real estate. They're written for you to use as tools to help clients make better decisions, right? So we have to make sure that we are in that mindset of recognizing what our role is. Our role, right? Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to step in and be directive to help pull people forward. And if you get stuck with, I don't want people to feel like I'm being pushy. My fear is that your version of pushy in the eyes of the client feels like you're neglecting them. Because most clients don't feel like you're being pushy when you're simply being directive and helping them be guided through the process. That's your own head kind of creeping in and sending you down the wrong path. So be really careful about that, right? Yes, ma'am, Barbara.
Okay, I had an experience a couple of weeks ago where someone had told me about this house being for sale by the owner. So I looked at the house from the outside and thought, boy, this would be something for a couple of people who I know are looking for a house that they could go in and fix up. So I texted the guy and I let him know that I was an agent and I knew who was selling it for sale by owner. But if I could bring somebody who was interested in purchasing the house, would he be interested in offering me a commission? Mm-hmm. So he texted me back and he said, sure, come on over. So I came over with a couple of clients. They took a look and he said, listen, I've got the contracts on the table. My cousin's signing up the house just next week. She just hasn't done it yet. So I don't need an agent. I said, hey, listen, that's okay. I just really wanted to give them an opportunity to take a look at the property. I said, I just absolutely love this house. And it's just adorable. And there's so much you can do about it. So I came back with a third party a couple of days later and he met me at the door and he said, listen, you've got the listing. He said, you are so excited about this house and no one else has been excited about this house, even my cousin. He said, so I would like you to just go ahead and take the whole thing, which I realized enthusiasm and being excited instead of holding back and being more reserved worked wonders. And I was genuinely excited. So that was a real learning point for me.
I'm going to tell you, Barbara, that there is no story that you could have told me tonight that would make me happier and prouder of what than what you just did, because you're 100% right? And let me ask you this, Barbara, was that like a huge aha for you based on kind of where you had been running the business from?
A huge aha.
Right? Because now I'll answer this question, and I appreciate your transparency and allowing me to put you on the spot. Would you say yes or no to this question? Were you one of those real estate agents who suffered a little bit from I don't want to be too pushy-itis?
Absolutely.
Right? And what I know about Barbara is, and you guys all heard me say a week ago how Barbara all of a sudden is like, we've awoken the giant. Like she's out there killing it. So to now have this story on top of last week's is so awesome to hear, because excitement and passion is a version of you being directive, right? It's a version of you being, and I'm going to use the A word that a lot of you don't like, but I think excitement and passion are a version of you being aggressive. You're aggressively passionate. You're passionately aggressive. You're excited in a way that shows people that you want to get the job done. We can all call it what we want, right? Did I tell you this story last week? I think I didn't. I was sitting in my office probably 2, maybe 3 years ago, and an agent walked in and said, "Can I talk to you?" And their voice was really shaky. And I said, "Sure." And they sat down and they started to cry. And I said, "What's wrong? How can I help?" And they said, "Well, I was just doing call-arounds, simple call-arounds for a new listing that I was taking. And I got this guy on the phone. And when I said what I was calling for, he said, well, my house just expired." And she said, "Oh, well, I'm curious." And she kind of switched into her expired script and said, "I'm curious, knowing that you had your home on the market and that it didn't sell, are you still interested in getting your home sold?" And by asking that one simple question, this guy said, "You know what? Even if I was interested in getting my home sold, the last person on earth that I would list it with is you. You are far too aggressive," and hung up on her. And so she's telling me this story and she's upset and she told me that. And I thought, oh my God, that's awesome. Like, why are you crying? That would make me so excited. And she's upset. And I said, "Well, what did you do next?" And she said, "Well, I didn't do anything. He hung up on me." I said, "Oh man, you missed a massive opportunity. You should have called him back and said, 'I am so sorry we got disconnected. You were just talking about how aggressive I am. And my question for you is, doesn't it take an aggressive real estate professional to get you the results that you're looking for at the closing table?'" Like, I'm sorry, was I missing the point? I thought you were paying me a compliment, because aggressive gets the job done, right? And so guys, you can call it aggressive. If you want to call it pushy and still go move forward with it, that's fine. Barbara's recognizing that same idea with passion and excitement, right? An elevated level of passion and excitement. All of those things that I know a lot of you are looking at me like, he's nuts. They're all different. I'm telling you, they're not different. Your version of that, as long as you're pushing that forward, will bring you forward and get you results. Did you hear what Barbara said? She said, "The contract for my listing agent is sitting on the counter, so I don't need an agent." This person was very clear that he was not interested in having someone come over and be the listing agent. Barbara never once asked to be the listing agent. She just did what she does so well, which is come excited to get a job done. And she got hired. Oh my God, my week is made, Barbara. Thank you so much. I don't have to have one other good thing happen to me like until next Monday, because you made my week. All right, what were we talking about? I don't know. I got so excited with Barbara's news that I have no idea where we're going. So let's dive into prospecting sources, shall we? Because I told you we were spending the whole time on that today, and I lied a little bit. So on page 26, in Power Session number 3, you have a list of sources of business, right? Let's start. Let's just run down this source of business and make sure that you have an understanding of exactly what these look like, how you push forward, and what it takes to make one of these a pillar in your business. What do I mean by a pillar in your business?
Standard.
So yeah, I mean one of these, you're going to choose one or two of these, and most of your business is going to flow from you creating a strategy around doing this at the highest level, right? Because the idea of throwing it all at the wall and seeing what sticks doesn't work quite as well as you having a narrow focus and creating some mastery around one or two of these, and then feathering in others as they come, but choosing one or two of these and really going whole hog and getting on purpose. So if it's all right with you, let's start with open houses. Can we start with open houses? Cool. What do we know about open houses in the last 6 months? What can you tell me about open houses in the last 6 months?
A lot of them have been virtual.
Right, so we have had to pivot a little bit, right, in the last 6 months on open houses. What can you tell me about open houses in the last 3 months?
They're overwhelming.
Right, overwhelming how?
There are so many people lined up to take a look.
There you go, right? So instead of using that O word, let's use they're so effective. They are massively effective, right? To the point of you have to have a strategy and a system in place to make sure that you're handling it well. But they are crazy effective. What else can you tell me about open houses in the last 3 months?
There's a lot of buyers actively out there shopping that that have not to be shopping for several months, and some are unrepresented and some are represented, and seems like they are going directly to the property that's brand new, listed on the market, because they want to be there, want to see what's hot, right?
Yeah, so pent up demand, right? I'm hearing Christian say we're still dealing with some pent up demand, right? That's true. What else can you tell me about open houses in the last 3 months, as opposed to the 3 months prior, right? Barbara gave us, we had to kind of pivot to some virtual stuff. What's happened in the last 3 months?
There's more in-person open houses.
We're back, baby. You got it. We're back, right? And for most listings, most of the time, you're able to host responsible, with all the safety protocols in place, open houses in person again, right? Go ahead, Effie.
I was just gonna say they're a great source of leads.
Yeah, and so let's dive into that a little bit. A great source of what kind of leads?
Okay, probably A buyers who are out there spending their weekends actively looking for homes, looking to move within the next 30 to 60 days.
So 100%, you've got A buyers out there. What other kind of leads are out there?
Ones that you can probably nurture over a longer period of time.
So yes, absolutely. You've got kind of B's and C's out there that you might be able to convert in terms of buyers. Who else besides buyers are out there at open houses?
It could be also listings. They might need to sell.
Yeah, neighbors. Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Neighbors, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Neighbors.
Right. Listing opportunities. Absolutely. Right. And I will tell you more in the last 12 to 18 months than I think I have ever seen in my career before, listing opportunities being discovered and converted at open houses. And I think the reason for that is that people like to remain as anonymous as possible right into the last minute. And so sellers kind of visiting open houses, especially the neighbors visiting open houses, is a direct clue, right? They're not there to see what the Johnsons did with the kitchen. They're there because they're curious as to what 675 gets you in their neighborhood. They're curious to see how you might be showcasing that property because they may be searching for an agent, right? So just recognize, and I say that out loud to you beforehand, because I want you to recognize that when people walk into your open house, be careful that you're not only talking to them as potential buyers. Make certain that you're asking some really valid questions and having conversations that could appeal to a potential seller as well. Because you at an open house, here's what's real. It's an interview. Hosting an open house is you putting yourself out there for multiple interviews in an afternoon. Perhaps buyer interviews, perhaps seller interviews, right? And remember, you are always modeling behavior. And so if you're there, professional, with lots of great information and asking awesome questions, being powerful, the message you're sending to people is, wow, this person knows what the heck she's talking about. The Joneses are lucky to have retained her. I wonder if she might have some room for me, right? Because you're always modeling behavior. If the buyers walk in and you're on the couch with your feet up reading the newspaper, and you have to leap up out of the couch to say, oh, sorry, I had dozed off a little bit. And I will tell you personally that I have had that happen when I've walked into open houses. The host with their shoes off on the couch, feet up on the coffee table, snoozing under a newspaper. Really?
Hey, Rick, can I share a story from this weekend?
Yeah, 100%.
I had a bunch of open houses this weekend, and one of them, this couple came in and they were from New York and they were looking for Connecticut. And I said, are you selling a house? Yes, we've got a realtor over there. She's great, but she just got licensed in Connecticut. I don't want to be your guinea pig. And I said, well, that's really smart because there's a lot of differences when you're a buyer versus New York and Connecticut. And I just started rattling a bunch of stuff off. So long story short, I'm probably going to represent them on the buying end over here. So
yeah. And you know why? Because what Margaret did was instead of having conversations at the open house about how to reel them in and hook them as clients, she showed them value. And she showed them value from her, right? They may have gone to a bunch of other open houses and nobody else told them about the differences. Nobody else was I was going to say a version of full of it, but that's not what I really meant. No one else was full of that knowledge, right? Full of that knowledge that Margaret volunteered once she heard where they were from, right? And it wasn't about, oh yeah, it wasn't scare tactics. It wasn't about, oh yeah, you really should get out of New York because God knows no one's going to be living there pretty soon, and yeah, you're smart. It was about how can I help you achieve what it is you've just mentioned to me that you're looking to achieve. And I will tell you that one of the best ways I know how to convert people at open houses is to give. Don't take, just give. Even if they don't convert at the open house, give, and give some more. Give of your time, give of your knowledge, give by asking powerful questions to help them self-discover things or think about things they maybe hadn't thought about before. Right? Because now you're giving them the gift of really thinking through something that maybe they hadn't thought of before. And then follow up by giving some more, right? Give of your mobile app, your KW consumer app, to make sure that they have access to things. We want this process to be as easy for them as possible. So give, and then when you follow up, give some more. hey, how can I help? That's all I'm calling to find out. How can I help you? I'm curious, did you have a time frame in mind as to when you wanted to be living in Connecticut? Let's work backwards from that, right? So recognize that there's a lot of opportunities for you at open houses. Now let's talk a little bit about hosting these open houses, right? Thank you, Margaret, for sharing that, because it makes such a brilliant point. If you don't have listing inventory of your own, what is your opportunity?
Right here in our brokerage, there's numerous listings that other teams or other agents have that come on and off all the time. Ask around.
Mhm.
Yeah, so Christian makes the point of being proactive about that, right? And so you live inside of a very productive organization, right? There's plenty of listings to go around for everyone to host open houses if they so choose, right? Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to recognize that there are houses that may be better for you to be sitting in than others. What do I mean by that?
You could mean, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking of like days on market.
Mhm.
So it could be that, right? So older, staler inventory may not bring you the new, fresh buyers. What else? What else might you look for?
A price point where things are moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, really big one, right? Make sure that you understand how the market's moving in that particular town to make sure that you're not saying yes to sitting in an open house. Like right now, $1.5 million to $2.5 million in Reading, I think I might pass, right? Nothing personal, Reading, but the reality is that may be a slower open house. Now, if you're looking for buyers in Reading, find opportunities in that 4 to 650 range, right? Because those things will move far more quickly.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Here's the other thing to remember. If you're hosting an open house in a certain town, I had a couple of years ago, I had an agent come to me after an Ignite class and say, do you have a second to talk? I'm a little frustrated. I said, sure. She said, well, you know, I'm having this struggle where I have a bunch of buyers and I appreciate these buyers, except the buyers are all in Woodbury. And it's like a hike for me to drive to Woodbury to show these properties. The price point isn't all that high. So I'm spending like hours getting back and forth to Woodbury to show $200,000 to $250,000 houses. And I'm just curious, how can I adjust that to either a higher price point or something a little closer to where I want to grow my practice? And I said, well, that's a great question. I'm curious, where are all these buyers from Woodbury coming? Do you have a listing in Woodbury? She said, no, I don't. And I said, okay, so do you mind if I ask, well, where are these buyers coming from? And she said, well, I keep volunteering to host an open house for somebody's listing in Woodbury, and the listing's on for like $275 in Woodbury. And weekend after weekend, I keep going and doing this open house in Woodbury. I'm like, aha, we have solved the problem, right? Stop doing that open house in Woodbury if you don't want buyers in the twos in Woodbury, right? So I know that seems like kind of like a duh, right, conversation. And yet I want to impress upon you that if you're looking to grow your business in Stamford or Norwalk, well, then host Stamford or Norwalk opportunities. If you're looking to grow a business in Danbury or Ridgefield or Wilton, host opportunities there, right? Because that's your buyers are going to start showing up. The neighbors from those areas will start showing up, right? If you don't want to schlep out to Woodbury, maybe pass on the Woodbury open house opportunity, right? Because that's what you'll attract. You'll attract Woodbury buyers in that price point. So be really specific about how you choose your open house. If you have your own inventory, I encourage you to host open houses in your own inventory. Chelsea, I'll get there in a second. host open houses in your own inventory, and don't get stuck inside of your own inventory. Because I see listing agents fall into that trap as well. Well, I have 3 or 4 listings now, so every weekend I'm doing something in my own inventory. Even if your own inventory isn't in that sweet spot of where you might be able to attract buyers, right? So that doesn't mean ignore your own listing inventory. It means maybe double or triple up one weekend where we're servicing your own sellers and also doing something on somebody else's inventory so that you can continue to strategically attract clients the way you want to attract clients, where and at what price point. Does that make sense to everybody? Chelsea, did you have a question?
Yes, so you kind of answered it, but I guess, so when you, especially as a new agent, when you want to, if I don't have my own listings yet, I don't have my own inventory yet, but I definitely have thought that's a great way to kind of get out there and be learning. So do you reach out to the agent whose listing it is and you offer to do, and within our company only, correct?
Yeah, so great question. Let me answer all angles of that. So you have an opportunity, everybody on this call has an opportunity to just kind of run inventory. I often get asked, where do I find that? Just go to the MLS, right? And plug in the office codes for our offices, and you'll run a list of all active inventory, right? You don't have to limit yourself to your own market center. Because I am the broker of both market centers, any inventory in either market center is available for any of you to use as an opportunity, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be, if you're affiliated with the Stamford market, you don't have to find a listing agent in the Stamford market center. If somebody from the Ridgefield market center has a listing that you want to plug into, you're more than welcome to call somebody in the other market center. So anybody inside of our organization, feel free. Here's what I would do. I would set up a schedule. I would set up a schedule for the next 30 days and figure out what it is you plan to do each weekend and start making calls now. Because if you make calls on Thursday or Friday before the Saturday or Sunday that you're looking to do, oftentimes it's the listing agents are already hosting one themselves, or somebody volunteered for that one, or the sellers, there's not enough time for the sellers to say yes, right? So give people enough time. What I find is that, if I call Raquel and say, hey, Raquel, 123 Main Street, is it possible for me to host an open house there this weekend? And Raquel says, oh, you know what? I just put that on. I'm actually hosting that there myself this weekend. Awesome. I wondered, would the sellers and you be okay if I hosted one maybe next weekend? Right? So start booking a little further out, because now Raquel's like, oh, you know what? That actually might work, because I have 2 other listings that I need to make sure I'm feathering in for open houses. And so I'll focus on those that next weekend. And then the seller still gets serviced, and I get to host an open house in a property that I'm attracted to, right? So don't be afraid to get really specific about what it is you'd like and how you're going to build your schedule. Here's the other thing. Don't take it personally if you call a listing agent and they say no. Most of the time, most of them will say yes. And yet there are times, like if it's brand new to the market and the listing agent is looking to host it themselves, or maybe they have kind of go-to people in the market centers that do their inventory. And so don't take it personally. You may get a no every once in a while. Smile and say thank you very much, and then move on to the next one, right? It's not about saying no to you. There are other reasons that the listing agent may have things going on that might not make that property available for you at that time. Let's have a small chat about making open houses a pillar. Right? And again, we talked about a pillar being a main source of business. And it's funny to me because as a real estate coach, I ask this question far too often and usually get a rather disappointing answer. Are open houses a pillar of your business? So many people believe that it actually is a pillar of their business, where so much of my business is going to come from this one source. That's awesome. I'm curious, in the last 12 months, how many open houses have you done since it's a pillar of your business? And the answer is typically between 20 and 40, right? People who are doing open houses, generally speaking, give me an answer of, in the last 12 months, I've done between 20 and 40 open houses, right? Now, how many weeks are there in a year? 52, that's correct. Now, there's not, I'm not saying you should be working every single weekend. And yet, if you did work every single weekend, with at least 2 open houses a weekend, if it's a pillar of your business, well, that's over 100 open houses, right? And so if you scale that back for, I'm not doing everything every single weekend because A, I'm on vacation, B, you know, maybe there's holidays where I'm not doing things. Here's the point. We've studied this, and statistics show that if you're looking to earn income at a high level from open houses, that your business should produce a minimum of 8 open houses a month. 8 open houses a month. If you do the math on that, that's 96 open houses in a year. Anybody think I'm crazy yet? Some yes and some no. So the question that I get asked often is, well, so if I'm doing all these open houses, when do I actually work with the buyers that I find at these open houses? Right? And so that's just a schedule management conversation. That's just a schedule management conversation. So the team leader in the Stanford Market Center used to be the buyer's agent on my sales team, right? Before we hired him as the team leader of the Stanford Market Center, he was the buyer's agent on my sales team, which runs here out of the Ridgefield Market Center. And he was a $200,000 plus a year buyer's agent, right? At a 50-50 split, which means if he was on his own, he's a 400,000 GCI agent, just to kind of put it in perspective for you. And what I watched him do was understand that open houses was a pillar of his business. For him, absolutely a pillar of his business. Open houses and his database. Those were the 2 pillars that he mined the database and was great at getting referrals and worked open houses like nobody's business, right? And so what he would do is in the heavy months, like late March, April, May into early June, and then again September into October. So those months of the year, yes, he was busy with tons of buyers, but he would schedule manage such that he was out with a buyer on Saturday morning, did 2 open houses midday on Saturday. So there was a buyer earlier. First open house was from like 11 to 1. Second open house was from 1:30 to 3:30, and then a second buyer in the afternoon. So are those full days? Yeah, sure. But in those heavy months when he knew being in front of people at open houses would feed his business for all the other months, he would do everything he possibly could to host minimally 2, maximally 4 open houses in a weekend and still work his buyers around those. Now, did that happen every weekend? No, of course not. Were there some weekends where there were, there was 2 on a Sunday and all buyers all day on Saturday? Of course, right? But my point to you is, if you're making it a pillar of your business, you've got to actually do way more than you think, right? Because doing an open house every weekend doesn't bring you the results that make it a pillar of your business. And that's not my opinion. That's statistically across the country, we've done the math, right? And the math says 8 a month is that magic number that will bring you where you want to go in terms of the income that you'll earn. It will create enough momentum and enough possibility that you'll get short-term buyers, short-term sellers, medium-term buyers, and long-term buyers. And if you continue that process year in after year after year after year, imagine the now business that you find, which is constantly feeding the now pipeline, and imagine the bucket of leads that you're collecting, so that when you start applying like a 36 touch program to it, you have things falling out of the sky 6, 12, 18 months later because you heavied up on all those open houses. Trust me when I tell you, it is sustainable, because I watched it happen. And I've watched agents, your colleagues, do the same things. There's a challenge which I'll issue you shortly, that very few people have taken me up on, that I'm curious who on this call is going to take me up on. Go ahead, Chelsea, and then I'll give you the challenge.
I know that having open houses on Saturdays and Sundays is the industry standard or norm. I guess, do you have in statistics or information as to why there, I don't know, hasn't become maybe a trend of like a Friday evening happy hour open house type thing?
I love the way you think.
Yeah,
right?
Even Thursday night. Thursday nights are, especially if you're looking to the like millennial population, Thursday nights, date night.
Yeah. So really great point, right? And so the tail end of this conversation is, if you're truly jammed with more buyers and appointments than you know what to do with on Saturdays and Sundays, and you're still looking to have open houses be a pillar of your business, well, then weekday open houses are absolutely your path forward, right? And you do exactly what Chelsea was just describing. You figure out when I might get some traffic, right? The example I always use is, what if there's a listing near an elementary school, and I don't know about where you live, especially nowadays, no kids take the bus where I live, right? The buses drive around empty and everyone drives their kids to school, right? And so if you have if you know what time the elementary school drop off and pickup are, you can host like an 8 to 10 a.m. open house at a property that's on the path, on the road to the school, and host a like morning brew, morning Joe, cup of Joe, whatever, right? Open house. You can do drive time open houses, right? I love Chelsea's idea about date night for millennials on Thursday. I didn't know that date night was Millennial Thursday. I guess it's because I'm not a millennial. So I appreciate knowing that. Now I'll use that from here on out, right? To make sure that what people understand is people are out on Thursday nights. So you could have that. You could have a drive time open house on Fridays. One of the things I used to do on Fridays was that commuter open house, right? Pizza and soda. And so and it was from like 5:30 to 7:30. So people coming home from work would stop in. A lot of them would stop in because they're coming home late from work. They knew their family had already eaten. And so if they could grab a slice of pizza on the way home and check out an open house, well, then they didn't have to worry about cooking anything when they got home. What do you got, Donna?
So I had a listing over in Southbury that was right off of Kettletown Road, and there's an IBM on Kettletown Road, and Kettletown is a pretty good drive-through anyhow. And I would do during the week 4:30 to 6:30, and people would stop in there like crazy on their way from work. And here was the interesting thing, two things. One, how many people said, thank you so much for doing this during the week. On the weekends, we're so busy. We've got ballet, we've got soccer, we've got blah, 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 blah. So that was really cool. They were crazy about it. But here, the other one, why are you doing that?
I read that.
Oh, stop. And the other thing was that often if the wife stopped through, she would get the husband or the significant other, the other person on the phone and say, okay, so I'm here. How long are you going to be open? Okay, get over here. No, I'll go get the kids. You just go. I want you to see this house. I mean, it was like this tag team because they didn't have the children, you know, in tow or running to some sort of event. So yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah. So really, really smart, right? Those are all really smart ideas. And so the simple answer to Chelsea's question is there is absolutely no reason you can't do weekday open houses. I encourage you to be strategic around them, right? Know when you might get decent traffic at a certain property and why that might work. Be strategic about it, and yet don't. There's a in the old Ignite, one of the mega agents from the West Coast is quoted as saying, so if you're brand new to the business or you're relaunching your career and you don't have a whole lot going on, what else do you have to do? Right? Host an open house every day and just continue to build that pipeline and find clients. If you're not going out with buyers this weekend, there's no reason that you shouldn't finish up with us tonight at 7 o'clock, run a report in the MLS and figure out what properties you want to host as open houses and start hosting open houses as soon as Wednesday, right? Tomorrow's probably a little fast, but you could probably get something going on for Wednesday or Thursday night, which I hear is Millennial Date Night. So take advantage, right? Minimally figure out something for the weekend. Now, if in fact
nothing going on,
right? But well, because here's the thing: if you're not, if you don't, your calendar isn't full of appointments to go and list property or or have buyers hire you, well, then you need people. And one of the best ways that as someone who's launching or relaunching their career, or someone who's just, you know what, now that I think about it, I could use a shot in the arm in my career. I'm not launching, I'm not really relaunching, and yet I could certainly use a whole lot more opportunity. So what if I just injected that opportunity by going and putting myself in front of as many people as possible over the course of the next couple of weeks? And so the challenge that I oftentimes will issue at this point in Ignite is which of you, or which of yous, right? Remember my cousin Vinny? Which of yous will say yes to hosting 30 open houses in the next 30 days? 30 open houses in the next 30 days. I've only had one person ever actually take me up on that. She didn't quite get to 30. She got to about 24 or 26. I can't remember which. And that was Marissa Gilberti, right? And so, and Marissa will tell you, if you text Marissa and ask her, hey, what were the benefits of your push to 30 open houses in 30 days? She set up the next 6 months of her business like you wouldn't believe. She got some today business. Much of the business she found in those 24 or 26 open houses she did in 30 days was tomorrow business. But then she just continued to follow up because now she had a pipeline. She was in a spot where she kept looking around saying, you know what, I have a couple of rentals and that's not going to pay my bills. I need to find more opportunity to find more opportunity. And so she just took me up on that challenge. And she set up her business 6 to 12 months out like you cannot believe. Make sense?
Hey, Rick, can I share something?
Yeah, of
I
course.
think, so Jen gave us all a challenge to, host as many open houses as possible. And I found that I have to look at it as a similar funnel thing. So for me, the sweet spot is I reach out to 10 to 12 agents, sometimes on a Sunday for the next weekend or a Monday. And if I do those, I can usually get at least 3 or 4 for the following weekend. But you have
Beautiful.
to really, again, go wide.
Yeah, and so what Margaret's reminding us is there's strategy behind all of this, right? You can't decide You can't wake up on a Saturday. Well, I guess you could. Your results would be less effective, right? It's more effective for you to plan a week, 2 weeks. I encourage 30 days out, right? Be contacting have an open house calendar, right? Have a simple calendar that only is for your open houses so that you know what you're doing in what weekends or what days over the course of the next couple of weeks, and then work backwards to make sure that you're marketing them properly and doing your call arounds and inviting the neighbors, right? You're going to do 10, 10, 20, 20, right? You know what that is? Make phone calls to the 10 people on the left, 10 people on the right, 20 people across the street, and 20 people behind. So that minimally you're contacting around 50 people. I know 10, 10, 20, 20 actually adds up to 60, but you're not going to necessarily have access to all 60. So that's why we tell you to do 60 so you can find numbers and connections for about 50 and invite them. So you're driving traffic. Make sure that it's posted everywhere it needs to be online. If it's not your listing, if you're the host and not the listing agent, you may well need to engage the listing agent to assist you in promoting the open house, right? Because some things they only have access to as the listing agent. So just work in tandem with them, right? Run your Facebook ads through command to make sure that people know where you're going to be. Target the Facebook ads. You have a property in that $600,000 to $800,000 or $900,000 range in a whole bunch of the towns that we cover, especially if it has a pool. The surge is still happening, right? People coming up from New York, that's what they're looking for. So target Facebook ads for your open house to drive traffic to you. Yes? No? Maybe so? But again, Margaret's point is an important one. This doesn't happen without planning. You need a system and a strategy and time to implement that system and strategy around the open houses. You need to understand that you need to do more open houses than you think you need to do to create the amount of business that you're looking for by about double. By about double. So as you're building a plan, right? So in about a month or so, what's today? In less than a month, I think the first, right after Election Day, we're going to be hosting our business planning clinic, right? So that you can plan very specifically for next year. You need to be thinking about these sources of business in preparation for building your business plan for 2021. If you expect to have X number of closings and 50% of them are coming from open houses, well, then we're going to help you take that number and back it out and say, okay, I need to do this many open houses. What's interesting is you still need to do twice as many open houses as you think you do to earn at the level that you want, even if public open houses aren't one of your pillars, right? Because I think people underestimate the amount of actual dollars that come from consistent open houses, or they misquantify consistency inside of open houses. So when you're starting to build that plan, double it, and then build a calendar that supports you doubling it and figure out how that all works. And we'll help you do that in the business planning clinic. Any other questions on the planning of open houses and how strategically you're going to work that open house source?
You have you probably do have this. You have scripts for open house when you the follow up the call after you meet the client and all that.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep charging through source of business, and then we're gonna touch on Wednesday on follow up to all these sources of business, so that we're having a follow up conversation in whole instead of after each and every one. So if you can hold on that, Christian, till Wednesday, we'll give you a bunch of follow up ideas and tools for each of these sources. They're almost all the same with slight tweaks.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, where do you want to go next? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me say this one thing. If you've never hosted an open house on your own before, what I encourage you to do is shadow somebody at an open house. Connect with your market center to make sure that you know who's doing what open house this weekend, and then just give a shout to one of the hosts to say, hey, you know what, I'm newer to the business. I've never hosted an open house before. I wondered if you would mind if I shadowed you on your open house, right? There's no leads there for you, and most of the time if you're shadowing, but at least then you get the feel and the understanding of what that process looks like. That's a better learning tool for you than me sitting here for 30 minutes saying, here's how you host an open house, right? When we're all just staring at each other on a screen. I'd rather you actually see an agent in action and see what those results are, and then come back, and then we can have a conversation around, well, I would do it a little differently. Here's my suggestions, and we can talk about some ideas and mastermind through other ideas for open houses. But I would encourage you, if you've never hosted an open house before, find someone to shadow this weekend. That's going to be part of your homework, is to shadow somebody at an open house. And then we'll have a conversation a week from tonight around how that went, what you learned, and share some additional ideas. Yes? Okay. Because if you've never hosted an open house on your own before, we really need you to shadow somebody first so that you can kind of get your feet wet before you start hosting your own. And that could be find somebody on Saturday to shadow, and still between now and Thursday or Friday, schedule your own for Sunday. As long as you do the shadowing on Saturday, you can jump into your own on Sunday. I'm not saying you have to delay it a week. I'm just saying get a shadowing in first. And if those of you who are in class already know you're doing one, because you've already shadowed and hosted your own in the past, just pop that in the chat box so that maybe those of you who are looking for someone to shadow could utilize each other to make it a little bit simpler for those of you who know you're hosting open houses this weekend. All righty. So let's keep moving through prospecting sources, because we're at 20 after 6 and we've gotten through 1. Where do you want to go next? Look at that list. Tell me what you want to talk about next.
I would say expired or withdrawn listings.
Okay, so expireds. Great choice, Martine. Let's go there next. Somebody define what an expired listing actually is.
Expired listing is a listing that was on the market at some sort of time frame. It could be 300 days. It could be 20 days. Whatever happened, the agreement was expired per se. So the agent or the owner didn't really particularly work well with each other. A lot of circumstances could have happened, but it did not successfully close.
Right. So that's exactly right, Christian. The contract has expired, right? It was on the MLS with a broker, and the contract has expired, which now makes it fair game for anybody else to pitch themselves as a replacement listing agent, right? Let's be clear about expireds, withdrawns, and cancels. Expireds, the contract has expired, so there is no additional agency relationship. Anything that says expired, EXPD, on the MLS is fair game, and you can go after that. What about cancels?
No.
So cancels are a yes. Cancels you can go after because, again, the contract has been terminated. Canceled is canceled. So the contract has terminated. So there's no additional agency relationship. So you have an opportunity to make outreach there. What about withdrawn?
No.
That's the no. Yeah, that's the no. Right. Withdrawn only means taken off the market. There's still a contract. There's still an agency relationship with the listing agency. So you calling that seller could be seen as, mostly because it it could well be that you are intruding or stomping on an existing agency relationship, right? And you can't do that. Trust me when I tell you listing agents get very, very testy when you cross that line. So that's a no-no. Nothing on the withdrawals. Expireds and canceleds are fair game, as long as you have verified that expired or canceled hasn't relisted since the time of expiration. When do properties expire in the MLS system?
End of the month.
So they expire on the day of the that is the last day in the listing contract, and if that day happens to be the end of the month, yes, but it's not necessarily the end of the month, right? It's any day. It's any day that is the last day of the contract. What time do they expire in the system?
Midnight.
Midnight?
Midnight. Yep, midnight. Not a sound from the pavement. Has the moon lost her memory? Oh no, excuse me. I'm sorry. Got distracted by Andrew Lloyd Webber. So midnight, yes, midnight. So if you are a real expired fanatic, you could, if you happen to be up this late, you could certainly pull all of your expired information as they expire at 12 midnight. I don't necessarily advise making the phone calls at midnight because most people will be upset about that. Most people, I think, are asleep. Even if you're up, be careful about that, right? But then you're ready for that next morning to go and hit it right away, right? In the old days, I will tell you, the MLS used to turn off every night, right? So in the old days, the MLS, it was a DOS-based MLS system back when I first started in real estate, and it turned off at like 11 o'clock because it had to do like this overnight download, upload, inload, outload, whatever it did. And then it would turn back on at 5 o'clock in the morning, right? So those of us who were expired people were like, okay, turn it on, come on, we're 5 o'clock in the morning. We wanted to get that expired information. Now it's accessible 24 hours a day. The expirations happen at 12 midnight for that day. So if you are up and you want to get prepped, you could then do that, or just have that available for you the next morning. So let's talk a little bit about reaching out to expireds. List for me, if you would, some emotions that you feel the owner of the expired property might be feeling the morning after the property actually expires.
Frustration.
Yeah, frustration, certainly. What else?
Pissed off.
Yeah, anger.
Yeah, anger, pissed off. What else?
Fear.
Disappointment.
Disappointment, fear. Yeah, good ones. What else? Say it again, Christian.
He's gonna have guard up. He's gonna have trust issues.
Yeah, that sometimes happens, right? There's distrust. What else, Effie?
I was gonna say the same thing.
Got it.
Maybe
Anybody
second
else?
guessing if he wants to sell it after all, like if it's going to sell.
I'm sorry, say that again, Margaret. I didn't catch the first
Maybe second guessing, like maybe this isn't the right time.
Oh yeah, doubt creeps in, right? Second guessing. They feel kind of rejected. They're blaming the industry a lot of times, right? They're blaming the last listing agent, right? There's a lot of blame that goes on. Anything else that you can think of?
Sometimes they just want to renew with their current listing agent.
Yeah, right. So sometimes all those emotions create a level of kind of insanity, right? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And yet all those emotions, the one thing that's given them some comfort is, well, I've had the same agent for 6 months. I don't want to have to get to know somebody new, right? That sounds crazy to us when we're sitting here thinking, okay, but they didn't get the job done. And yet it's a way that sometimes sellers handle all those other emotions that we just listed, right? So for those of you who have never kind of considered utilizing expired properties as a main source of business, can you see that without good scripts, you are putting yourself in the path of a whole lot of emotion? I mean, everything you guys said is 100% right? There is fear and rejection and anger and frustration and all those things. It's like, okay, great. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, that's the person I want to be calling. And so without good scripts, you sometimes run into a scenario where if you start to stumble or you're not on point, all you're doing is underlining all those emotions. You're pushing all the same buttons. You're showing the seller who feels like our industry didn't produce for them, that maybe has a competency issue. If you're not strong and on point and separate yourself out, you're just showing them how right they are. Right? Now, part of expireds are near and dear to my heart, I will tell you. I built my entire real estate business on expireds. Part of the reason I built my business on expireds is because when I started in real estate here in Fairfield County, I had just moved here. I didn't know a soul except the guy who sold me my house, and he didn't need a real estate agent, right? So knowing one person in all of Connecticut, and that person being a realtor, I had no choice but to, so I didn't have a whole big database, right? I didn't have friends and family who were local that I could plug into, right? Some of you are nodding your head, that same thing exists for you. So I looked around and said, okay, well, what are my opportunities? And my opportunities were strangers. And what I knew was I had an opportunity to find strangers at open houses, and I had an opportunity to find listings with strangers via expireds. And so I got hot and heavy on expireds for my listing inventory and open houses for my buyers, and built an entire career 21 years later off of those two things.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Yep.
So I thought about actually going after expireds when I first started real estate. I actually haven't pursued it, but it still has an interest in the back of my head. I understand that we can see that these listings expire on the MLS. The magical question is, and we can answer this, is how do we get their contact information? Is there a lead source that we should be seeking? Or is there some sort of way that we can get in front of these people and get in touch with these people once it expires?
Yeah, so great question, and we're headed right there, right? So the idea of, I'm going to get there in just about 30 seconds. Let me just finish my thought, and then we'll head right there. So the part of what I determined was the best opportunity in terms of why expireds was such a great opportunity, right? Is that expireds had raised two hands already. What two hands have they raised?
They want to sell.
So the first hand they raised is, I want to sell my house. That's a pretty important hand to raise, right? When you're looking to take a new listing. What's the second hand they raised though?
They want to pay commission.
That they'll actually pay a commission. Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly right. Right. So those two hands, when I looked at that, I thought, okay, I don't have to go after for sale by owners, right? Who have raised a hand saying, I'd like to sell my house, but they're sitting on that hand of, I want to pay somebody to have to get it done. The expireds actually have raised both hands, so they're a perfect opportunity. So they expire at midnight. You run the report in the MLS. That's how you find the properties. And so to answer Christian's question is, once you find the properties, how do you find the contact information? Guys, I'll tell you, this has changed over the years. Back when I was doing it, well, frankly, you're going to hate me for this. Back when I was doing it, we used to just put the seller's phone number in the MLS listing, because the buyer's agents would call the seller directly to schedule and confirm an appointment. This was before showing time and all that other stuff, right? So this to me is one of those areas that I argue that technology has actually made things more difficult, because when the seller's phone number was right in the listing, the listing expired and you just called the seller. So that doesn't happen anymore. And it's harder and harder and harder to get accurate data from so many of the free systems, right? So as that changed, then we used to push people to free systems online that they could look up numbers with, like 411.com or anywho.com or what'smynumber.com. There's all these different services, Spokio. Now, to get accurate data, most of those companies are looking for you to pay, right? There's a free version and then there's the pay version. The free version isn't typically worth much, and so they're looking for you to pay. So because most of that data now you need to pay for, what I would encourage you to do, if expireds is really something you're going to pursue, don't just pay like a Spokio so you can look things up. Actually engage with a system that will either give you access to as many numbers as you want, like Cole, C-O-L-E, Realty Resource, right? Cole Realty Resource. Or plug into like a dialer system, a system like Land Voice or Mojo Dials, or Vulcan 7 is another one for it's good for expireds. And those systems, they scrub the numbers and just present you with the scrubbed numbers for the expireds, if that's the package you purchase. So John is telling us vgsi.com and then do an address lookup. And that'sthem.com is good once you actually have their name. And are those both free still, John? Yeah, awesome, right? So there's some free options in the chat box for you, vgsi.com and that'sthem.com. Thank you for those. So that's
the VGSI.com won't have like New Canaan or Darien or Greenwich, but it'll have every other town in Connecticut.
cool. With phone numbers, accurate, valid phone numbers.
That won't give you phone numbers, but it'll give you the owner and when it's like the tax card.
Yeah, so VGSI is vision appraisal, right? That's the website for vision appraisal. So phone numbers won't show up there. Does That's Them get you phone numbers?
A lot of times, yeah, and sometimes email. Not every time, but I would say it's more than 50%.
Got it.
Pretty good.
Right. So there's some resources for you. And again, I think for me, again, if expireds is going to be one of your pillars, I would pay for it, because going the route of you finding it, I will tell you, it takes so much time that you spend most of your morning attempting to get contact information and not enough of your morning actually making phone calls, right? So you're going to get up in the morning and spend all these hours trying to gather the data. By that time, everybody who's calling expireds has called the expireds already and either has booked appointments or there's not much left for you. So I would utilize those resources, see what you get. And if there's a struggle for you in terms of getting volume data information, search out some of those paid resources, because I think that will be more effective for you. And so what are you saying to these expired sellers, right? You're getting people on the telephone. So here's the other thing about expireds. Most agents believe that expireds are called by everybody in the business. And I can tell you that is so absolutely entirely untrue. Right? I was new in the business and I thought, well, I don't care if they're getting called by anybody. I'm just going to call them better. I'm going to call and make sure that I set myself apart. And one of the things that I recognize that I want to impart to you, because it's a crazy important concept. If you are hot and heavy on expireds, please understand the reason for your call. What is the one reason for your call when you're calling an expired seller?
We're trying to figure out if they're motivated to sell again. If they're looking for they're looking for the best agent. Are they looking for the best agent to sell their house?
Give it to me in one word. Starts with an A.
Aggressive.
Oh, close.
Acquiesce.
Appointment.
Appointment. There we go, John. Appointment. When you make an outbound phone call to an expired, your one goal is to set an appointment. And that has to drive you forward differently than, because what a lot of times when people who are new to expireds get going on expireds and come back to me and report their progress, they're getting people on the phone, they're not getting appointments. And so oftentimes I will ask, okay, you know what, let me listen, right? I've done coaching calls with people who dial me first and then three-way call in the expired. So I'm like sitting listening to the call, which is totally awesome because then I get to hear exactly what's going on and can help them figure out why they're not converting to appointments. Well, here's what I find. The biggest mistake agents make with making expired calls is that they try to list the property, not set an appointment. They try to give all the reasons why they should list with me on the call. Guys, you're not looking to have the listing appointment on the telephone. You're looking to get an appointment to make sure you're in front of that person as quickly as possible. That's the main goal. Let me restate that. That's the only goal of an expired call, is to get an appointment. If you don't get an appointment, it's follow up until you do. Or until they make it abundantly clear that they're not going to list with you. That sometimes involves foul language, and I saw children on the call before, so I won't give you some of the things that sometimes get said. No, I'm kidding. People aren't mean, right? Because that's the other reason that that agents don't reach out to expireds or for sale by owners, because they think people are mean and angry. I'm going to tell you, just like anything, is there always that one who's crabby or had a bad day? Sure. But you could have that at the supermarket. You could have that at an open house. You could have that anywhere. For all intents and purposes, I called expireds religiously for 5 or 6 years straight. People don't yell at you. People they're not mad. They're not upset with you. Sometimes they're upset and there's emotion, but you have to recognize it's not you. You don't even know them. You didn't do it. So I absolve you all of your guilty conscience when you're calling expires, because it has nothing to do with you, right? I actually used to use that as part of my script work. When people were upset, I would just call it out. My goodness, Mrs. Smith, you sound so upset. I am so sorry you had a bad experience. And to that, one of the things I specialize in is making sure people who had bad experiences the first time around have a positive experience the second time around. I'm curious, is there a time that I could stop by so we could talk about my strategy to get you the result you were looking for? I sent you some scripts earlier today. And what I find is that in the Zoom world of Ignite, going through these scripts is less effective and less fun. And so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to run through just a couple of lines with you. And then I want you to practice some of these. And on Wednesday, I'm going to break you out into some breakout rooms just to kind of run some of these lines back and forth so that you've said some of the words out loud. Right, I promised you breakout rooms and rehearsals, and now so this is when all that stuff pops in, right? So we're gonna start taking some time each week to just run some of these back and forth with each other. But I want to run through them with you a little bit first. So who has the scripts in front of them? Anybody have them in front of them? Okay, so I just need a volunteer of somebody who has them in front of them. You don't have the lines for the seller, right? I just want you to answer as a seller might. And again, just for example purposes to get us through the lines, don't be like jerky seller. Be normal seller, right? I can show you, and we can objection handle jerkiness later on, right? Because sometimes that pops up. But I'll tell you, I don't want you to practice with the seller being kind of jerky, because what I find is that doesn't happen as often as you think it does. You actually have more normal conversations more of the time than maybe is in your head. So I want to practice with you the stuff that really happens And then every once in a while we can say, well, what if, and we'll solve that issue. So somebody just answer the phone when I do my ring ring. I want to run you through a couple of lines in the Doris Carlin script so that you can hear the through line, and it's only the first 5 or 6 lines to get us to an appointment ask. Okay, ready?
Mhm.
So ring ring.
Hello,
Yes, hi, is this Margaret?
this is she.
Margaret, hi, it's Rick Scott with Keller Williams Realty. I'm sure that you figured out by now that I saw you come up today on the MLS as an expired listing, and I was just calling to see when, to ask the question if you're looking to still get your home sold.
Definitely, absolutely.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I'm curious, Margaret, had you sold your home? Where were you headed to?
We are heading to Pennsylvania,
Oh, Pennsylvania, lovely. Whereabouts in Pennsylvania?
Harrisburg. My husband's getting transferred.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. And is that ultimately what's taking you there, is the job transfer?
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. I'm curious, with a job transfer, that usually has a pretty strict timeline involved. How soon did you need to be in Harrisburg?
Well, we should have been there already. He's living there now. I'm here with the kids.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Let me ask you this question. How much longer do you want to have to live apart?
Not long at all.
Okay. So it sounds to me like there's some urgency involved here.
Yes, for sure.
Excellent. You know, Margaret, I am so glad I called today. Listen, if we could get your home back on the market and find a buyer in the next, say, 30 or so days to get you and your kids to Harrisburg so that you didn't have to split the family up any longer, would that be a conversation that would be worth having?
Oh, of course, 100%.
Oh, excellent. Again, I am so glad I called today because, man, oh man, that must be so rough living apart. So listen, Margaret, I have some time. It's 6:45. I actually have some time later this evening, if it's not too late, around 7:30, or maybe around 11 tomorrow morning. Which would be best for me to stop by and have a quick conversation?
Tomorrow would definitely be better for me.
Okay, so tomorrow at 11. Very good. Well, I'll see you then, and I look forward to our conversation.
Great, thanks.
Okay, bye. All right. So thank you for that, Margaret. And again, not everyone is as cheery as Margaret was. And yet sometimes, I want to make sure you understand this. A lot of times they are, because what most expired sellers really need is someone to understand that they just need some help, right? And in a scenario like Margaret put out for us, hello, she's living apart from her husband. Her kids can't see their father. I mean, that's terrible. And so just being human to say, oh my goodness, that is a struggle. I am so glad I called. It sounds like we really need to get this moving quickly. There's no reason for Margaret not to say, yeah, quickly is right, because this kind of blows. I'm not happy about this. So I want you to recognize that there is a pattern to this call. And the pattern I want you to recognize is this. It's, hello, I noticed you were an expired. I'm curious, are you still interested in selling your home? Now you can ask that a bunch of different ways. Like Doris Carlin likes the whole, when might you interview some of the top agents for the job of getting your home sold? See, to me, it's all a little wordy. I just like being direct with people. To say, your home came up as an expired. I saw your home, it fell off the computer. I was just looking to see if you were still interested in getting your home sold. Now, Margaret can say one of a couple of things. She can say yes. She can say no. She can say, go to hell. All your realtors are horrible. I've been receiving 7 million phone calls, right? She can say a whole bunch of different things. The script work says, regardless of what Margaret says when I say, are you still interested in getting your home sold? I validate it and say, got it, understood. I'm curious, Margaret, had you sold your home, where were you moving to? Guys, we're going to take that pivot. I know it's an election season, so everyone can't stand that word pivot, but we are going to take, it is a bit of a pivot from script work perspective, and we're going to move, instead of pushing Margaret down the path of, why do you think your home didn't sell? And keeping her in the misery of the failure, we're going to redirect her to some motivation questions and some future pacing, so pointing her in the direction that she wants to go in. So if she says, yes, I still want to get my home sold, excellent. I'm going to gather a little bit more information so I can legitimately close for the appointment and help Margaret out. If she says, no, I'm not interested in getting my home sold, I'm going to validate that and say, God, I completely understand. I'm curious. I'm still going to gather some more information. Because Margaret could be saying, no, I'm not interested, out of frustration or out of fear, out of panic, out of annoyance, out of all those things. So when I pivot her to that question of motivation, where were you headed? If she still says what she gave me, well, we're headed to Pennsylvania. Oh, I'm curious, what's bringing you to Pennsylvania? Oh, my husband is transferring to Harrisburg. Understood. I'm curious, in a perfect world, when did you need to be in Harrisburg? If the answers were still the same, once Margaret gave me that information, I would take a little pause and say, you know, Margaret, if you don't mind my asking, when I asked if you still need to get your home sold, you said no, and yet your circumstances sound very much like a yes. I'm curious, what's preventing you from taking that next step to getting your home back on the market? Oh, I had a really bad experience. Got it. Got it. You know, would you be surprised? Would it surprise you to know that I hear that a lot in the phone calls that I make to sellers who weren't successful the first time around? One of the things I'd like to do this morning, Margaret, is make sure that you understand that my expertise lies in getting homes sold the second time around that didn't sell the first time around. So trust me when I tell you, it was fate that I were on the phone this morning. And so I'm curious if again, if I could get your home back on the market. This was one of my favorite closes. If I could get your home back on the market and find a buyer in the next 30 days, would that be something that would be helpful? Would there be a benefit in us having that conversation? Now, did I promise Margaret I could find a buyer in 30 days? No. I said, if I could get your home on the market and find a buyer in the next 30 days, would it be a benefit to you? And in Margaret's circumstance, the answer is, yeah, absolutely, that would be a benefit. Great. Let's schedule an appointment so that I can talk with you about how we get that done. Do you see how we pivot right to the appointment? Would you see benefit in talking with me? Yes. Great. Here's when I can do it. Because we're not doing it on the phone. Because that's having the appointment on the phone. See how that works?
That's great. I like that closing.
And so here's what I want you to understand. Expired calls, when I was making expired calls, they were relatively short conversations on the telephone. Because my goal, and I reminded myself of my goal by writing get the appointment and putting it in front of my face when I was doing my expired calls, I remembered very clearly why I was calling. So for me, it was, hi, do you still want to sell your home? Had you sold your home? Where were you headed? What's taking you there? When do you need to be there? Close. 5 things, bing, bam, boom. Now, the scripts I gave you, they go on and on and on. Again, for me personally, I think they're too lengthy. I give them to you because there are some really cool questions and some interesting paths to go down in case you get stuck or in case someone pushes you someplace. So you can kind of answer the question or objection handle and still pull it back. So reading through these is still beneficial for you, or I wouldn't have given them to you. But for me, if I were your expired coach, what I would say to you is you've got 4 or 5 different questions to ask, and then you close for the appointment. What I got really good at was if Margaret started to ask me questions, so I'm going to close, right? And Margaret says, well, you know, it would be interesting to meet with you, but, you know, what do you do differently than my last agent? I'm afraid I'm just going to go spin in circles. You know what, Margaret, that's a great, great question. And the answer to that question takes a little bit longer than we currently have time for on the phone and includes some great visuals, either in person or via Zoom. So I encourage you, let's grab one of those slots that I have available tonight or tomorrow and schedule that appointment. Right? I'm going to redirect back into the appointment. Maybe Margaret has a bunch of different questions. Wow, Margaret, it sounds like you have a bunch of different questions. It sounds like the best way to handle that is for you and I to sit down together and really have a strategic conversation around how best to get your home sold. Right? I'm not going to give in. And trust me, I've done this wrong and I've done it better. Right? When I was newer at expireds, you know how sometimes you're doing something and all of a sudden you kind of float above yourself and look down and you think, hey, what are you doing? Right? What are you saying? Why are you doing that? I can remember very clearly, it was a property in North Ridgefield, 10 Marie Lane, where I'm on the phone trying to get this appointment and I'm floating above myself, looking down at myself thinking, okay, you're talking about the New York Times, you're talking about advertising. I was having the appointment on the telephone, right? And so I learned a great acronym that I started using to prevent that from happening. I wrote close for appointment right above my, with my scripts so that I could see it and I was staring at it to remind myself. And then I used the acronym WAIT, W-A-I-T, which stands for, why am I talking? Why am I talking? And for those of you who just can't help yourself, there's also waste, W-A-I-S-T. Why am I still talking? Right? Because sometimes realtors have the gift of gab, which is awesome, except when you need to close for the appointment, right? And what I learned over time was the more confident I became in my ability to close for the appointment, which came from my confidence in knowing that I sounded different. And I offer that to you because it took me a long time to figure out that that was what I needed. I knew the scripts. I knew what to say. I just wasn't confident enough in my ability to be different. And what I found was these scripts make you sound different because most of your competitors, when they call expireds, they're going, first of all, they're not going right for the close. They're having this big, long conversation. Some people think that that's building rapport. How many people do you know at 8 o'clock in the morning after, when their kids are trying to get on the bus and their house just expired and they're trying to get to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and the husband's already there, want to chit chat on the phone, right? Those of you who like to chit chat on the phone, you need to know that 50 to 60% of the population would rather not chit chat on the phone, period. So if you like it, you have to remember that you only have a 30 or 40% chance of finding somebody else who wants to chit chat. And from a mirror and matching perspective, you need to know that get to the point is what people are looking for. Remember, people, they didn't call you. If they wanted to sit and have a conversation with you, they would have picked up the phone and called you. They didn't do that. You called them. Therefore, you need to let them know exactly why you're on the phone, why it's a benefit, and then close for the next step.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
This might be a little ahead, but let's say you schedule the appointment, you go meet with the seller and you figure out that they're very stubborn, want to do their own thing, and perhaps they overpriced the listing, or there was situations where they didn't want to cooperate with their agent. How do you address these things in a nice way and calmly objection handle them so that the advice you're giving them, essentially, they want to listen to you and work with you? Great question. And it is slightly premature. We're going to address all of that, Christian, when we get to our seller section, which starts on Friday. Right. And so I'll answer it this way, though, since we're 4 minutes from being out of time. We'll end on Christian's question. And here's how I'll answer that. You objection handle as much as you possibly can. There are times, especially with expireds, where
I would utilize the technique I said to you before, right? Where if someone is going to just keep pushing and pushing and not look at the reality, not look at the data, right? I'm a data-driven real estate agent. I'm a data-driven individual. And so I use that in my business. I'm a data-driven real estate professional, which means it doesn't matter what you think it's worth, what you need, what you bought it for, you know, what your cousin sold for 6 months ago. Like, none of those things matter. What matters is the data that we've put on the table. And so I got really good at driving people back to the data and asking simple questions around the data, basically asking them to justify what they want based on the data. And at some point they can't. And so when we get to a point where they understand and finally break down and say, look, I can't justify what I want with the data. Understood. Now we can have a conversation. If you can't get them to a place of understanding and admitting that what they want isn't justifiable with the data, that to me is, at some point, I'll objection handle it a couple of times. If it looks like it's a losing situation, I'll start to pack up. I'll use my script. You know, this has been so wonderful. It was such a pleasure to meet you. It looks like you and I are going to have to agree to disagree on the best path forward. And I wish you the absolute best of luck. Take care. Like, I'm putting stuff in my briefcase and I'm done. And again, what I have found over time is every once in a while, someone let me leave, but for the most part, they didn't want me to leave. And so then it was like, where are you going? Well, again, I don't want to take up much more of your time. I completely understand how busy you are. And again, it looks like we may have to agree to disagree on a path forward. Well, but so you're just going to leave? Well, tell me why we're staying. Like, tell me where we're going here if I'm going to stay. Well, let's revisit and we dive back into the data, right? I would use that with pricing. I would also use that with commission. If the commission was a conversation that we didn't get to an agreement on, and I objection handled it a bunch of times and we still weren't there, bam, you know what? Thank you so much. This has been so lovely. You have a lovely home, and I've had so much fun getting to know both of you. I do want to wish you the best of luck. It looks like we may have to agree to disagree on the value I bring to the table to get this job done. And so with that, I'm going to wish you a pleasant evening. It's my favorite thing to do, just by the way, right? Because 9 times out of 10, they didn't want me to leave. And again, when you do this enough, you start to be able to read the signs, right? I knew the things I was telling them they hadn't heard before, right? Because here I have for 21 years, I have done my best to continually make sure that when I show up for a business meeting, whether it was the listings and sales side back when I was doing that, today when I was a team leader, I was having business opportunity and recruiting appointments with real estate agents, and even today to continue to bring different opportunities to our market centers. I come at it from the perspective of, how can I make sure that I sound different than anybody else that they talk to? And so if everyone else decides to go left, I figure out a way to go right. I'm going to show you that in the script work that we're bringing to you for buyers and sellers, right? It's in this expired script work. Most agents who do call expireds step in the big bucket of you know what of, why do you think your home hadn't sold? Guys, I will encourage you, don't ever ask that question, because it's a trap. It doesn't matter why their home hadn't sold. They'll tell you all about it in person when you're there to actually redirect and get a listing agreement signed. You don't want to waste all that time on the telephone understanding why they think their home hadn't sold, because it's not relevant. What you need to do is find out the motivation behind why they were a seller in the first place, validate that, understand that there's urgency there, and then offer them a path to actually accomplish their goal. When you have that conversation, now you sound different. You sound different than the agent that they just expired with, and you sound different than anybody else who called that day. That's why you get the appointment. Everything else is secondary. It's not unimportant, right? What the Christian's question is that secondary piece. What if you get there and things go off the rails? We're going to address that when we talk about go through our seller scripts, I promise. All right, guys, with that, it is 7:01. You are free. You are released. Thank you so much for your time and attention
Thank
and your
you very
awesome
much.
questions.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. Have a great, great evening, and I will see you. Remember, before
Thank
you
you.
depart, Wednesday is a different time. Wednesday is 5 to 7 this week only, not 4 to 6. So this Wednesday, 5 to 7, I had to make that adjustment, not 4 to 6. You'll also get an email tomorrow and Wednesday on it. We will see you on Wednesday. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Good night.
you.